Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Built Not Bought episode 10, man. We made it to episode 10. You know what I'm saying? I'm really, really enjoying doing these now, man. I'm really enjoying doing these. I also created the social pages for Built Not Bought, and I also have the podcast now on all platforms that you can stream podcasts on. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate all the support that I've been getting. Appreciate the new subscribers that I've gotten on my YouTube. So, on my last one, you guys know, instead of doing the usual format, I kind of talked about some stuff that I was just experiencing in my personal life. And, I am going to get back to the traditional format on this one, but I did just want to circle back around, you know what I'm saying, to what I talked about on the last one, what my last week looked like. That way it's like, a closed circle. So basically last week I was kind of talking about how I was just struggling mentally with a couple of things, you know what I'm saying? Like my habits broke down, my routines broke down, and that started to see me not exercise, not, do the things that I know I need to do to be successful. So right, so what did I do? I made the episode about it, I talked about it, I put it out into the ether, I made it a real thing, and I made a plan. I made a plan. And I said, you know what? Okay, cool. Like, let me start just by doing the small stuff, bro. Like, let me just journal every day. Let me make sure, like, I'm making my bed. Let me make sure I'm praying. Let me make sure, you know what I'm saying? All the small stuff. I just started doing small stuff, making sure I did all the small stuff that's required to have a good day. And lo and behold, last week was a super productive week, one of my most productive work weeks almost ever, I think, in terms of like numbers and outbound activity. And that is 100% because of the fact of I addressed the issue. I saw the issue, I addressed the issue, I put together a plan, I executed the plan. Right. So I knew what the problem was, I diagnosed it, and then I actually took action on it. So, you know what I'm saying? So I did everything that I talked about doing in that last episode. Just wanted to share that with y'all. So the topic for this one, man, I was really thinking about, we talked a lot about a lot of different things. And if you guys have been following along, then you've been able to probably start making some changes in your life and start growing personally. So one thing that happens that you don't really think about this ahead of time, we'll consider it like a negative. I can't even say a negative side effect because it's not really a negative side effect, but the growth process, the process of growing, the process of you changing as a person, that process for a time period is 100% going to get real lonely. There's going to be a certain time period where everybody's own self growth journey, they're just going to find themselves by themselves. And it's almost just something that you have to go through, right? So, for example, for me, I personally felt this the most. This is back when I was 19. When I was 19, I got kicked out of my house. I was wilding out in college, was not going to class. My attendance rate was like 50%. My best grade was a C. My GPA was terrible in college. I say college, but I was literally only there for 2 years. So when I got kicked out of the house, and I was surfing on one of my friend's couches for a little bit, and then my dad ended up coming up to Connecticut and taking me back with him to Louisiana. So boom, I'm in Louisiana, and it's just me, my thoughts. How did I get here in the first place? For context, at the time, my dad was in a one bedroom apartment. I'm sleeping on the futon. I don't have my cell phone service. My dad at this time didn't have no Wi-Fi, no cable. So I basically have nothing right now to do to distract myself from analyzing the situation, thinking about how I got here, and really just mulling over my thoughts, and you know what I'm saying, like really thinking things through. So, I really had to get to this point where I started just working on me. I had to start growing because I didn't have anything else to do. I didn't know anybody in Louisiana. So, I was starting to hit the gym, blah, 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 got a job, got some money, got my own cell line, got my cell line back, started talking to some of my boys. Actually, before that, my dad went and, used some of his bread to get Wi-Fi. So boom, got Wi-Fi, got reconnected with some of my boys, and I had a drastic mindset change from when I just talked to everybody in my friend group to when I reconnected with everybody in my friend group. Right? It's been a couple months now since I probably talked to anybody in my friend group, and this version of me that they knew in a couple months has completely changed, already disappeared. I'm no longer the same no ambition, happy go lucky 19-year-old that they just knew a couple months ago. I'm now a 19-year-old who is on his grind, trying to change his life, actively doing everything I could do in my power to grow as a person and change my life. So when I reconnected with a lot of my friends, where they were and where I was were just two completely different area codes. I was in this mindset and this mind frame of like, yo, what do I need to do to get out of the situation I'm in right now? And doing everything I could do to do it. I'm reading books, learning, working, blah, 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 whatever I could do, hustling. Like I'm doing everything I could do to change my situation. So like I wasn't just trying to like chat. Like I'm trying to run up some money and change my life. So for me, I got to this point where I was like, yo, like there's nothing for us to talk about right now, right? I got to this point where I just couldn't really relate to partying, going out, drinking, smoking. I couldn't relate to that at all. So like when they're talking about that, when I'm reconnecting with them, like, yo, what's good? Oh man, we just chilling, we just been rolling up, blah, 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 blah. Where like me, since I've been in Louisiana, I ain't touched nothing, bro. So I couldn't relate to that anymore. I just couldn't relate to it. And I wasn't trying to even hear it because it's just like it has nothing to do with me. I'm not on that right now. So I say all of that to come back and say, bro, that this journey of growth, this journey of self-discovery, as you start growing as a person, you might find yourself being lonely. You might find yourself by yourself because the you that everybody else knew is no longer going to be there. And sometimes when your identity changes and you grow, people have a hard time accepting that new version of you. And if people around you have a hard time of accepting that new version of you, that's going to impede your personal progress of being able to create that new reality of yourself. So, you'll be in a situation where you'll have to really just maybe have to cut some people off because like instead of them giving you props for changing or believing in your growth and this new person that you're becoming, they're throwing shade. They're throwing like, oh, like, nah, man, just come on, do this with us, or are you not going to do that, or blah blah blah. Instead of like helping you push to grow and them growing with you, right? So if they're not growing with you, if they're not changing with you, then when you're on this journey, you have to be prepared to like leave some people behind, bro. Like you just have to be prepared to. And it's not in a way of like no hate is being thrown, but it's just in a way of like I have to work and focus on me. And unless you guys are moving the same way I'm moving right now, then I can't be around this because that is going to slow down your own progress by you being around something that doesn't align with what you're looking to do, right? So when you're on this journey, you just really kind of have to be prepared to really like be by yourself. And I honestly would say that one of the things that actually allowed me to grow the most was being by myself. Because when you're by yourself, especially if you're in a new city, a new town, a new area, which number one, I would suggest to everybody to never just stay in your hometown. You have to move out of your hometown at least one time in your life and live somewhere else where you don't know anybody else. But we'll circle back to that in a second. So The time, well, it's going to connect. So the time where I really grew the most in my life was when I moved to Louisiana, or really anytime I moved to a new city and state, but Louisiana specifically. This is the first time that I've moved somewhere new. And this, when you move somewhere new where nobody knows you, and now you're an adult, you're older. This will be the first time in your life that you get to basically create an identity per se, right? This is a time in your life where every single interaction that you are getting ready to have, they've never met you before. They don't know any of your history. So like you are now being able to create a completely new identity and build a brand new identity of yourself. So everything you do now is building upon a new person. That person that you were, yeah, you could bring that person with you. But if you've moved somewhere new where nobody knows you, you don't have to be that same person. You could be somebody completely different, right? So this is a time where if you're looking to grow and change yourself as a person, sometimes a new set of scenery will 100% help propel you to that next level as you're trying to change and grow, because now this new version of you is the only version of you that these people know. So as you're building up this new version of you, as you maybe stumble or trip, that version is the actual new version of you. And what you feel like is your old version feels like something brand new to them. So I grew the most when I had to challenge myself, and I had to challenge my own personal identity, and how I used to, and how I knew myself previously. The type of person I knew myself to be was not the type of person that I wanted to be in Louisiana. And I had the opportunity to change the type of person that I was and how I showed up. And I did change that. and like you're still always going to be yourself, right? But it just gives you the opportunity to maybe like take out some things that you didn't like that you were doing, or like maybe change some people that like you've associated with for maybe like a long part of your life. So that's just an area where I really grew a lot. And honestly, I think that everybody, like I said, everybody at some point, I feel like needs to move out of their hometown to grow, because your hometown is where you formed an identity as a kid, right? Like your brain isn't even fully formed yet. You're doing things, maybe not everybody, but some kids are doing things to be popular, right? Like hanging out with people to be popular, hanging out for social status. These are all things that go into play when you're thinking about your hometown area, your identity. Now, when you leave out of your hometown, especially if you're an adult, once you leave, all of those things I just mentioned are not at play anymore, right? Like especially if you're not in like high school, you're not in school, you're not trying to compete for like social status in this small environment. You're not trying to be cool. So like when you take a lot of those things out of the equation, the people that you might find yourself being friends with will change completely, and the amount of friends that you will have will change completely, and the criteria that you have for hanging out with people and wanting to be friends with people, that all changes completely. Maybe not for all people, but for me it did. So that's those are some things that when you leave your hometown, it's like this is the first time in a long time that you've had the ability to now pick the people that you spend time with, hang around, and invest in those relationships. So like I said, man, I keep saying it, I definitely think that it is beneficial to everybody to leave their hometown and live somewhere else at least once, even if you go back, whatever, cool. But it just does something to your soul to be able to a understand, like, cool, like, this gives me the opportunity to create the type of person that I want to be, but also b, you have to when you move somewhere where you don't know anybody, you have to sit with your, there's always going to be a time period where you first move somewhere, especially if you're like not working yet, which in my situation, when I first moved to Louisiana, I wasn't working. I didn't have a job when I first moved down there. So it was a lot of me just sitting with me. And and that at first was like lonely, and I didn't really know how to handle that, but I eventually became comfortable in that solitude. And I think everybody should also in their life have some time period where they're living in solitude, right? Because living in solitude is one of the main things that has allowed me to really be more self-aware, right? If you've never lived in solitude, or you never really like spent time by yourself with yourself, then you probably never really had the opportunity to like really like look inside of yourself and really spend some time with that and sit with that. So being in solitude, being by yourself, really kind of forces you to really look inside and question some of these things. And I think that's really where my self-awareness, and that's really where like my propensity started to grow and build for wanting to like journal and wanting to reflect and wanting to do these things, because that's really where I started picking up those habits, right? That's where they first formed. So I just think that that's a huge thing for being able to develop, right? Like as a person, if you want to grow, there's no path to grow as a person without internal reflection. Period, point blank. It is impossible to grow as a person without internal reflection, right? Like internal reflection, um, analyzing how you thought, how you felt in different situations is what allows you by default to grow. So being in a solitude environment is going to force you to challenge yourself. It's going to force you to just challenge who you are and what is important to you and just everything about yourself. So yeah, I mean, that's basically really what I wanted to talk about today, man. Was just really like this journey of growth, this journey of like self-discovery is sometimes going to be a lonely journey. It's sometimes going to be a journey where you're not going to have people to chop it up with, you're not going to have people to talk to, and it's just going to kind of be you yourself looking in the mirror and like trying to figure it out. And that that will be lonely at first, but you have to embrace that, and you have to look at this as a time to challenge yourself, to grow and be able to be comfortable with just being by yourself, because that does also just give you a certain level of power, right? When you're comfortable being by yourself, when you're comfortable with the person that you are, it drastically changes how you handle certain situations. It drastically handles how you form relationships with other people, because now you're shifting from being dependent on being around other people all the time to like being okay with just being by yourself, which being okay with being by yourself is something that does take time, and it even takes practice. So yeah, man, I appreciate y'all tuning in to the 10th episode of Built Not Bought, man. Um, we're really on a roll here. If you guys have any suggestions for any things that you want me to talk about next time, drop them in the comments. Please let me know. And until then, man, I'm out.